if we're going to grow this and we're going to keep it the way it is and we're going to be able to pass down all of the characters and the integrity and the things that we value, we have to be strategic, because he won't get it, and he won't get it, and the guys 100 years ago won't get it. And I think that's really been the thing that's been most impressive with our group, is that everybody got on the same page to realize that without being strategic in our message, we're really just a bunch of really kind of crazy guys that have a good time.
Yeah.
If someone were to lay out pictures of Pistol Pete, do you think you could pick out you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I was the best one.
Billy still has this thing, he thinks he was the best one. I had this belt buckle that still is in my office that I wore, and today these guys, they get a belt buckle now that they wear when they repeat, but mine was a leather belt buckle with white stitching around the edge, and it had Pistol Pete on the front. And it's that and my boots that I was wearing in the time frame, and you just know it's you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boots change, things you wear, like I had a leather bracelet I wore. My buckle was different than most Pete's and stuff.
Everybody had kind of, back then we had our own buckles. I had a buckle that I got at Mr. G's, which was a clothing store that was in the Student Union back in 1842. But I can find, I notice it, if I see a picture of me, my stance was a lot different than the other guys. I took the old Frank Eaton approach. So I was more hunched, old, worn-out, ragged cowboy. I'm naturally bow-legged and thin-legged.
And you're still that today.
And I am still that today. I am fat. And I just took that old man approach. And I was the only Pete for, I don't know, that I know of. I did rope tricks, and I had a bull whip, and I used the bull whip and the rope tricks and those kind of things. So when I see those, I go, oh, that was me. But
I sat on a plane one day. Actually, it was coming back from our honeymoon, my wife and I's honeymoon, and the guy in the aisle seat pulls out his phone, and his wallpaper is a photo of him and Pistol Pete. And I whisper to my wife, "Hey, I'm on that guy's wallpaper." And he
That's awesome.
I was like, you just know, like they were saying, I had a 88 on the front of my gun holster, so I either saw that or I saw part of my tattoo sleeve peeking out of the end of the shirt. But you do have that sense of like knowing, and it's kind of cool when you see stuff like that.
yeah.
Did you tell the guy, or were you like, hey, that's me?
Yeah,
What did he
my
think?
wife did. We took a photo, and it was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool time.
You mentioned your tattoos. I just have to bring up your tattoos. What do you have on your arm to commemorate Pistol Pete?
So I got, after the second time of not, making it, I thought, well, I could set myself up. No, I didn't know.
The guys didn't have enough tattoos.
The guys had no idea that I had a Pistol Pete tattoo, and I kind of wanted it. I remember going, well, we met for lunch at Joe's.
And I knew you had one.
And you knew, but I actually wrapped my wrist the night that I got selected because I didn't want anyone to know about that on the panel. So it was one of those things that, I love OSU. I knew that I wouldn't regret it even if I didn't get it the third time. I just love the university so much. But I've got a Pistol Pete. It's based off of the Gallagher statue in the lobby. And then on the other side, I've got a tattoo of Frank Eaton. I always told myself I'd never have any tattoos growing up, and my family is super against it and stuff. But it's cool. They tell a story just like we get to do here.
I've ever seen. That is the coolest.
it's
Not
pretty-
just because it's Pete. I mean,
It looks realistic.
It looks realistic.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks real.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool memory.
I'd like to throw something in, even though it's not a question. Stephen was the FFA president for the state of Oklahoma. And during his FFA, what do they call it, commencement address? What do they call it?
Yeah, retiring
address. He invited Pistol Pete to show up at his address, and actually had Pistol Pete come out whenever he came out. And there's a video online you can see and stuff, but it was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool. I think that was the night that I met Landon, the guy that I told you I traveled to some appearances with and saw. He came out and shot off the shotgun inside of the PAC, whatever it was called at the time in Oklahoma City. And I told the story of Frank Eaton and how, telling your story, just like we've gotten to do here can impact somebody, and kind of related the two. And then I talked to Landon and became friends with him. And
So it's real cool.
yeah, it was cool.
Tell your story about that sculpture.
Sandra Van Zant was Scott and I at that time were both on a board that we were very blessed and fortunate to be able to be a part of, but we got to select the sculptor for the Pistol Pete statue that's here in Gallagher, Iba. And she was in Oologah, and she was putting that together. They have different, we sold different statues. They had a 12-inch, and then they had a limit,
3 foot.
3 foot, and I was able to save enough pennies. I was able to get a 3 foot. So I have the 3 foot statue of that with the base and everything. I don't know, it stands up about this high, and it's really a cool statue. We got to be. So Scott and I got to go over and.
I have a 12-inch, by the way.
I as well.
Go ahead. Tell your story, Rick.
I actually at the time was working for a
Get to
company
the story.
that had a matching gift, so that's how I was able to afford it.
What?
I know. I didn't want to. But see all the things you learn out of this
I wanted you
deal.
to tell the story.
So anyway, we got to be able to go and watch the statue be made, and so we'd come over at different periods. So we were in the final stage. It was about to go to bronze, and Scott and I were over at Sandra's studio, and I had my son with me, Parker. And Parker was probably 5, something like that. I was holding him in my arms, and so we were looking at the clay statue in the back, and then Scott and we walked up to the front with Sandra's husband, and Sandra said, "Hey, Parker, come here," and she picked him up and she took him back in the back of the studio again, where the big giant clay statue was, and. Then they came back out. And so we're about to leave, and Sandra made the comment. She said, Parker is destined to be a Pistol Pete. I said, well, we'll see about that. We'll see about that. And she said, no, he's destined to be a Pistol Pete. He has to be a Pistol Pete. And I go, well, nobody has to be a Pistol Pete. And she said, no, he does. Because his fingerprints are in the handle of that gun. And Scott and I were looking at her, and I'm like, what? And she said, yeah. She said, I took him back to the back, and we were looking at it, and I took his hand and placed it up on the handle of the gun. She goes, and I pressed his 4 fingers into the mold on the back of that gun. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Now, whether those fingerprints, how deep they are, once it went to bronze, who knows, but Parker's fingerprints were in there. So when you try out 3 times and you don't make it, you start to question whether
Sandra Van Zant really was clairvoyant.
The good thing is he didn't know the story until afterwards. So anyway.
You guys have all mentioned Frank Eaton and the importance of honoring Frank Eaton as Pistol Pete. Last year, he was inducted into the Hall of Great Westerners. What did that mean for you all to be there honoring Frank Eaton with his family?
Well, it was great for us to, anytime we can all get together, which we've done that several times this year already, but anytime we can get together to honor the family, it's very meaningful. I mean, it's meaningful beyond words. I know it's meaningful to the family because they tell us every time we're with them. We're invited to their family reunions every year, and so we try to have a good presence there. But that was huge. I mean, it was so meaningful to be recognized, although really it was Frank's honor, and it was an honor for his family. For us to be on the stage and be recognized was very cool. And I don't remember how many guys we had there. Close to 40? Do we have 45?
Yeah, we had a lot.
Tables do we have?
A bunch.
And a bunch.
Yeah. So it was a great honor. It's a great honor.
They were. The Eaton family was Dow, the grandchildren, the great nieces that were there. It was really special for them, and I think it was a validation to, because Frank was so colorful, and he could tell a story, and we know that cowboys and old men and stories are like a toxic mixture. Some of them grow, and so his stories were probably embellished, but he has a book called Campfire Stories, and it's just stories that he wrote about growing up, you know, on the ground, you know, being a cowboy in the Wild West. And so it was a validation, when I say a validation for the family, because, you know, a lot of people discounted him. Oh, he didn't do that. Oh, he didn't, you know. Well, the stories are the stories, and the people that back up those stories, all the way from Fort Gibson and how he got the name and how he outshot all the cavalrymen, to being a deputy marshal, to rounding up cattle thieves, to being a blacksmith, to being a fiddle player and writing poetry. And, you know, if you read the word and you listen to the music, the guy probably did it. So it was really special for him.
It just validates him. I mean, the more things that he gets or receives, and that just further validates the fact that he is who we say he is. So.
Because not everybody gets in the Cowboy Hall of Fame or the Western Heritage Hall of Fame.
We were there, but just as visitors. Yeah.
What does it mean to you all to have represented a Hall of Fame cowboy?
You know, I think at the time you don't. I mean, Bryce could maybe speak to this more, because I think at the time, and I think we realized this the years and years that those of us that have judged, because I know I judged over 20 years and I've kind of passed the baton now, maybe close to 25. But our goal is to get the younger guys involved, but you don't realize it at the time, the significance of it. And it grows more meaningful with time. As you see these young guys take the reins and do the creative things they do, I think you know, it's highlighted every year by the new guys. And the longer you are removed from it, the more impactful it is. You know, we got 96 guys now that have been Pete. And that's a great legacy. You know, it's great to be a part of that.
And the older we get, you know, we start to realize we live in a disposable society. Things just come and go. I mean, we write things off. The younger generation, there's so much of history that isn't, if it's not laid in front of them to be able to experience, they're just not going to know it. And I really think that's why, and it's probably unspoken, but when you asked that question, I was thinking about that. It's probably why, as us older, and you say 96 Pete's, and I'm 39, I mean, makes you feel old real quick.
Closer to the front than the back.
Makes you feel old real quick. But it makes you realize how, and why it's so important and endearing to us, is to hold on to that tradition. I mean, the Wild West is gone. The stories of guys doing what they did, and they lived by their own laws a lot of the time. But every time they make a Western, everybody goes to them. Why? Because there's a romance to it. There's something about the thought of being free and wide open spaces, and it's up to you whether you're going to survive or not. And then it comes in men of character, and men of, you know, that aren't the good guys and the bad guys. And I think, you know, as we get older, that's what Frank Eaton, that's what he symbolizes for us. And as Pete's, because we're so close to it, I feel a stronger allegiance and duty to make sure that we pass that to the younger guys, and that we hold on to that and say, you know what? Yeah, there was things about it that was good. There's things about it that were bad, but those days are long gone. And if we let the stories die, if we don't do what you're doing today, when I die, you lose my library. When he dies, we lose his library. And we lose all those stories. We can't do that. We have a responsibility to pass those stories on. And if they're not chiseled in stone or put on film or in a written book of some sort that can be passed down, we are burning down libraries all across this country. And as a former Pete, I'm not going to let that happen. If I can keep it from happening. And I think that's why because he's just a mascot, right? It's just a mascot. It's the only mascot that represents a living human being.
We appreciate the fact that you guys have helped us catalog, tell some of our stories through the university and the oral history series. I know there's a real effort to try to document that. So we're grateful because you're helping capture that for generations to come, and that's a cool thing for our kids and grandkids and the future Petes, the guys that hadn't even thought about doing this yet.
Speaking of generations to come, we are celebrating 100 years of Pistol Pete, as you mentioned earlier in this interview. What do you all hope for the next 100 years of Pistol Pete?
Where it's at right now with the tradition that is being carried on and, the stories that, right now, like you said, the library, when they pass, we're going to lose their library as well. I just gained part of their library that's now in my library.
That's right.
And it's going to grow. So I hope that the tradition of Pete keeps going, and I'm going to do everything that I can to keep that going and share my library with the future guys and maybe even these guys. During my tryout, they asked me a question of something along the lines of, what do you think is the most important thing us Pistol Petes can do as alumni, is essentially was the question. And I straight up looked at it and I said, this right here, you have a tryout to select 2 new Pistol Petes to represent Frank Eaton, the university, and Pistol Pete as a whole for an entire year or even 2 years if that were to happen for that guy. And you've got this strong of a Pistol Pete army here to help make that decision because you don't want to make the wrong decision. And it's having the Pistol Petes come back and do what they need to do for the tradition to stay strong. And that, we don't want to, the world's changed. There's a lot of change. Like, for example, pistols, stuff like that. Pistol Pete still gets to carry his firearm at games. That comes with the work of some university and most of the guys at Pistol Pete alumni. We're not letting the world really mend what Pistol Pete looks like. Trying to find guys that are going to carry the role and walk Frank Eaton's walk and do what Frank Eaton would do. So that's just kind of what I see it like that. You want to carry that image for the next 100 after this one.
Yeah, 100 years is a long time. I think that, as odd as it sounds, with 100 years being so long of a time, I really hope not much changes. I think it's so cool to represent an actual person, like you were saying, Rick, and that's just not the case with other universities. You have some schools have 8 to 10 mascots every year. Their fraternity is a lot larger. I love the fact that we get together so often and stay connected and do life with each other, even outside of Stillwater. I think that makes it really special because we all got to share in one common thing. So yeah, looking back at 100 years from now, I really hope that we're still mainly connected to the Eaton family, represent them, and not much changes from the Pistol Pete point of view. I just hope that more and more people understand the story of who Pete was and that legacy.
Me personally, I hope Pete is bigger. And by that I mean, when I was in school, you had a couple of stores that had, the merchandise and stuff, but now you walk around and everybody has Pistol Pete everywhere. And yet, I want to see it even bigger in that not only just merchandise, because within the Alumni Association, we've started, doing charitable things, to being image in the community so that we can be a part of that. So I'd like to see that grow. I'd like to see the history be maintained. Like Scott said earlier, we're getting his violin, anything else that we can get associated with Frank Eaton, just to have a bigger presence, to be not just a mascot, but a symbol and a representative and somebody you'd look up to, I guess.
Well, and I agree with everything these guys have said. In 2018, we celebrated 60 years of having people be the mascot. Okay, so 1958 was the first year that we had the mascot. So what does that make us? 65 years now. So we're at 65 years of Pete's, where someone is represented wearing the head. So we're not even 100 years of that yet, but where do we think we're gonna be in 100 years, or where do we hope to be in 100 years, is just still doing this right here. Telling our stories, sharing our experiences, and making a difference for the OSU alumni and the fans that come out and see Pistol Pete at a parade or a birthday party or a wedding or whatever public event he's at. I just hope that Pistol Pete is still representing Oklahoma State University as the mascot, like the icon that it is today.
Yeah. Mine's pretty simple. It's two things. We select 2 Petes a year. I want 200 more Bryce Coons. I want 200 more of him in 100 years. Because if we do that, then we've done something right. And then the second thing is I want Pete to be carrying that pistol in his holster 100 years from now. It's important. Before there was a Pistol Pete, there was a Frank Eaton. And there was a reason why he got the name Pistol Pete, and it was because he outshot everybody at Fort Gibson Cavalry. He was good with a gun, and he was cross-sighted. Get that. He could shoot the eye out of a nickel. I mean, he was good. Pistol Pete without a pistol is just another cowboy. He's just another old, broken down old man that died at the age of 97, right?
97.
And to me, those are the 2 most important things. He needs to be carrying his pistol.
What has it meant to you all to be part of this Pistol Pete fraternity that only has 96 members?
It wasn't that important or that impressive. It gets more impressive every year. So when you're Pete, it's like, okay, I'm Pete, because you got all that going on. And then you get out of it, and then you're still trying to get life going on because you just graduated. But the more miles you get down the road, you realize that this is really special. And you find that we're not all alike. We're cut from different cloths, but we all share one thing. We bleed orange. We bleed orange.
Well said.
Yeah, and I'll say this fraternity wouldn't exist without, Scott or Rick, making their efforts, as well as Wendell and Rob and Mike Martin, and so, it's actually the efforts of those guys that have actually made this alumni association grow. So, I mean, we really owe a lot to them.
Yeah, we've done a better job in the last 15 years of keeping in touch, and I think that's helped the fraternity strengthen with email and really it probably goes back to the first guys that go up to the 30s, because they were meeting and having alumni gatherings in the 1970s and 80s, and so they saw the benefit of returning and staying connected. And so we've just hopefully taken that to the next level and not just made it every 10 years, but we try to do it every year with the parade, with the homecoming parade, with the spur ceremony, with various things that we've implemented. And I do think email has helped us get to that point where there is a better camaraderie and we see each other more, and there's certainly a synergy that comes from that.
I think what's really different, though, is that we took it from a casual group of guys that shared being Pistol Pete to a strategic effort to hold on to all the things that we've talked about previously in this podcast. But we suddenly got strategic about it. We realized that if we're going to grow this and we're going to keep it the way it is, and we're going to be able to pass down all of the characters and the integrity and the things that we value, we have to be strategic, because he won't get it, and he won't get it, and the guys 100 years ago won't get it. And I think that's really been the thing that's been most impressive with our group, is that everybody got on the same page to realize that without being strategic in our message, we're really just a bunch of really kind of crazy guys that have a good time.
Yeah. We do have more structure
Yeah.
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, I think also, you know, the fact that we do stay so connected throughout the year says that, you know, for each one of us, that Pistol Pete wasn't just some other thing that we did, you know, outside of for me personally, outside of some of the major days of my life, like getting married and starting a family. Anybody asked me outside of that, what was the most important thing you've ever done in your life? And it was representing OSU as Pistol Pete.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, for me, it's probably a different perspective, kind of like what Rick hinted on there, you know. So like for the past Pete's, the fraternity, the brotherhood behind it, for me, where I see it right now is the support, the, hey, if you need something, let me know. Or even when I'm at an event and I run into, I go into this wedding with a Pete head on, and heck, there's Chris Moody and Rick Wilson there. And I'm like, oh, I know these guys, you know, like 2 past Pete's, and I had no idea they were going to be there. And there's just the support, it's second to none. Like, they're always offering up. I get random texts from random Pete's that I haven't even met before, or like we've got some, like a mentor chat and some things. So I think the support side of it is kind of what I'm seeing and stuff.